Live from Lorain, Ohio, the internet radio capital of Northeast Ohio, Stopiki Productions along with WELBDBJ Radio brings you this edition of Here's the Thing. DPR the man, that's who I am. And I consider myself a red dot in a sea of blue up here in Northeast Ohio, the conservative voice of Lorain, with opinions, stories, and feedback. Have an action-packed 30 minutes coming up. All video as of 2014, so it's important to remember to check us out. You can interact with the program by emailing us at hdt2010@roadrunner.com. You can check us out on YouTube and Google+, where you'll see me actually sitting here doing what I'm doing right now. Well, many of the topics we have today are a little bit different. I'm trying to get away from Obamacare as much as possible for a while. I'm getting kind of tired of it. It's not going to go away. It should, but it's not going to. Let's start out with a little piece I found posted on Facebook from Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan when he was a young man, which had to put him back in the 70s, possibly 80s, where he said, and I quote, "The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media. The 30-second sound bites, now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance. Truer words have never been spoken." Now, how do these people figure this out, you know? I mean, if you look at the theory behind the show on my website, heresdathing.com, you find reference to Marshall McLuhan, who back as early as 1970-71 was saying that it would get to the point where the media would be all there is, that if it's on the media it must be true, that we live and die for the information on the media forms our society, and everybody laughed at him. And guess what? It's happening as we speak. So once again, I remind everybody, you know, you have to look past the source, if you will, and get to the words, try to get to the substance of a message rather than the content. If it has no substance, it isn't worth looking into. It wasn't long ago on TV there, on TV, one scientist was commenting on the fact that our cities, buildings were an extension of our bodies, and this is an extension of that, and this was an extension of our senses, and so forth, and that's nothing new. Marshall McLuhan said that how many years ago? Over 40. And again, it's true. All of the prophecies, if you will. Carl Sagan, who was responsible for Cosmos, which was one of the terrific programs that actually did educate somebody on what was going on out there, warned everybody about what's happening. On that note, this Democrat compared jailing rapists to fighting the Tea Party. This Democrat almost got into the Institute for the Utterly Stupid, except that another Democrat said something even stupider, and we'll get along with that later on. Democrat Jennifer Wexton of Virginia, a former prosecutor, is running to replace that state's outgoing Attorney General Mark Herring. In a new ad running locally, she blasts the influence of the Tea Party and compares it to her own effort to prosecute rapists, reports the Daily Caller. That would be by Dane Fitzgerald, the Daily Caller. "I'm Jennifer Wexton, and as a prosecutor I put violent offenders in prison," she states, after prefacing that remark with images and narration hinting at the horror of sexual assault. So far, so good. "In the Virginia Senate, I'll fight just as hard against Tea Party Republicans who would take away a woman's health care and her right to choose, even in cases of rape and incest." After having devastatingly deployed the war on women trope, she urges, "On Election Day, help me stand up for her." You know, again, I'm getting really sick and tired of people who cast the Tea Party as something evil. First of all, it's not a party. It's a group of people. Now, I was perusing around and I caught a post, a piece from a website called Politichicks. Now, I'd known about it before, but I never really thought about it until now, the other day, and I went and checked it out. That would be Morgan Brittany, Anne Marie Morell, and Dr. Gina Loudon. That's Politichicks. On the Politichicks website, Facebook page, one Candace Hardin. She lives in Atlanta. She's the creator and publisher of the literary magazine Bohemian Renaissance. And she made a very important point, which many people have made, but she made it about as succinctly as anyone I've ever seen. Who is running scared? What is going on in the USA? Both the Democrats and the Republicans are afraid of the Tea Party. Truer words were never spoken. The Republicans are deathly afraid of the Tea Party. Why? Because the Tea Party would presume to elect people who aren't part of the Republican establishment, the Beltway crowd. The current power structure would be disrupted. Seniorities would be changed. The ability to pork barrel would be different. The Tea Party consists of the average citizen, like myself. Some are younger, some are older, like myself. But mostly it is comprised of decent, hard-working people who want their country back. It is not a party with a chairman or any real hierarchy. It is just people who want to exercise the rights given to us by God, written into law by our forefathers. Have I not said that? Will I not continue to say that? It's about the Constitution. The Tea Party is made up of citizen patriots who, supported by the filibusters by Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. Filibusters are part of the due process of an elected official's arsenal to fight for his or her constituents' wishes and rights. The Tea Party is for God and country, family, and all the things the USA was founded upon. Now, if you're talking about God and country and family, you're talking about everyone in the United States of America. Women, children, men, all races, all religions, all creeds. White supremacists are not Tea Party. Black supremacists are not Tea Party. Extremists are not Tea Party. Tea Party is a group of people who got together a while back to put the fear of God, literally, into the government and say, look, we want people who are going to do what we elect them to do, not people who are going to presume to know better than why we elected them. The rabid and evil Tea Partiers are trying to eradicate the elitist elected and their royal lifestyles. Okay, Michelle Obama spending a couple of weeks in Oprah Winfrey's mansion in Hawaii, having the whole area shut down so that the residents couldn't even enjoy their lives while she was there. Why? Because she's the queen. She's the head woman. It must be as frightening as a horror movie for many of the elitist politicians. They have covered their eyes and ears and they cannot look. The Tea Party is made up of a group of voters who want their elected officials to do their jobs. Oh, the humanity. Don't be fooled. The powers that be are running scared. They know the golden teat, our tax money, is about to be pulled out of their mouths. So what is the Beltway slug to do? They have to do what they do best in any situation. Throw money at it. The elite have even corrupted your local chamber of commerce to join in the witch hunt, on the witch hunt. And of course, the lamestream media hands the poisoned Kool-Aid out nightly about how the Tea Party is ruining America. How could people who want family values and freedom of religion and freedom of speech and all the other rights that are guaranteed to the Constitution for everyone who's a legal citizen of the United States of America be ruining America? America wasn't built to do what America's being forced to do right now. And you can see that, especially if you're one of the millions and millions of unemployed who are no longer looking for a job and become non-part of the numbers. They get ignored. They get overlooked because the government doesn't want to admit how many people they've put out of work and how few people they are assisting in getting work. In fact, they just extended unemployment benefits for another 3 months. What good is that going to do a job seeker if all they do is get more money from the government? Well, just ask all the people who've been out of work for extended periods of time and aren't looking anymore. The more people that are on the government dole, the less likely they are to vote the current power structure out of office. It's that simple. It's their paycheck. And I'm sorry, but that's pretty pathetic if you ask me. Could anyone have predicted the power of a group of concerned citizens a handful of years ago? What the elitist, cushy politicians have forgotten is that the Tea Party is simply a large group of registered voters, the type of voters who actually vote. And now is the time to put the pressure on your elected officials and remind them that they are in your employ, not the other way around. Godfrey Daniels. They can and will be replaced each and every time for lack of job performance. There is a great deal more power in the numbers than could have been imagined. The status quo is gone. It's time for action, not words. If the Tea Party is a pebble in the shoe of the Beltway bunch, then so be it. 2014 can change many things for either good or evil. While many people do not consider themselves Republican, leaning more towards conservative independent, the Republican Party needs to understand that if they trot out another moderate, non-conservative candidate, they can lose again. The loss could be fatal to everyone. It is a make-or-break election year, and the party needs to try to win, not to try to get along with the left-leaning crowd. They've been doing that. They keep conceding to the Democrats, thinking that they're going to be more loved. They're worried about being hated. Well, they're the ones that are causing the Tea Party to be, quote, hated. And yet they're afraid of being hated if they associate with the Tea Party. They're shooting themselves in the foot. They're ignoring their base. Their own base is going to hate them. They're going to ignore a very large amount of voters who don't want what's going on in Washington and cater to those who would destroy the Constitution. Too many people did not vote in 2012 due to what they felt were lack of choices. We are now reaping the consequences. If you don't want to leave, to hold your nose and vote for the lesser of two evils in the upcoming elections, get involved now. Let your voices be heard, because 2014 and 2016 elections are possibly the most important in the history of America. I think she said a lot right there. If any of you are paying attention out there, you might notice certain subtleties about my bumper music. Heinrich Holder, that bastion of decency, law, and order, has decided to once again give the middle finger to states' rights. Okay, what happened? Well, in the state of Utah, which is basically run by the Mormon Church, which is okay, if that's what Utah decides to do, because the states have the rights and people have the right to practice their religion as they see fit. Governor Gary Herbert just declared that no gay marriage would be recognized in the state of Utah until the appeal before the United States Supreme Court is settled. And Holder decided to challenge the state, built on standing its ground against a nation that once tried to destroy its founders, to a duel. The Obama administration extended federal recognition to the marriages of more than 1,000 same-sex couples in Utah that took place before the Supreme Court put those unions on hold. That means that gay and lesbian couples can file federal taxes jointly and get Social Security benefits for spouses, request legal immigration status for partners. So it's a fight he wants. And what we have here is, again, people who, the Mormon Church has the right to declare that they won't recognize same-sex marriages. It's a church thing. It's religion. It's the freedom of religion. It's the First Amendment to the Constitution, the beginning of the Bill of Rights. Congress shall make no law that affects religion. You can't tell a person how to practice their religion. And if the people of Utah decide, because of their majority of their religion, if you will, or the religion to which the majority of people subscribe, decides that they don't want to recognize same-sex marriages, that's their business. The Attorney General, the President, the Congress have no business stepping in and saying otherwise. Now, if the federal government wants to say, okay, you can have Social Security, you can file joint taxes and so forth, that's fine. I mean, really, again, the federal government has jurisdiction over those things. Again, according to the Constitution, they can levy taxes, they can decide how they're paid. But they're attacking the church. They're attacking the church in Utah when they say that they have to accept same-sex marriages. And I think, once again, we all need to be aware of the fact that our government, in its present form, has no regard for the document that made them possible. Once again, we have to shout out to the veterans, those who have served this country with a check written for as much as their lives. Senate Democrats have sided with illegal immigrants over veterans of America's military, as reported by Matthew Boyle of Breitbart. Senator Kelly Ayotte, a Republican from New Hampshire, proposed a bill which would not just have paid for unemployment benefits for American citizens, it would have also closed a tax loophole that allows illegals to access the refundable child tax credit, and instead replaced recent cuts to veterans' pensions. Yes, when given the absolute choice, the Democrats sided with illegals over veterans. Okay, the amendment failed, 54-42. What does that tell you about the present power structure in Washington? What does that tell you about the liberals? What does that tell you about the Democratic Party and their lack of respect for those who fight to keep them in power? How ironic. Just thought I'd mention that because it's very important, again, that we keep an eye on these things when 2014's, this year's, midterm elections come up and 2016 rolls around and we have an opportunity to oust the power structure that presently exists in Washington, D.C. Oregon's COO, Macy France, headlines as a parent's voice on Common Core. Now, those of us who have children in school know what Common Core means. Common Core means teaching to the test. Teaching to the test. Every grade level has to pass a certain test, achievement level, if you will, in order to move ahead, set by the federal government. The federal government has decided how educated our children need to be based on some blanket principle of all children, generic children, without regard to race, religion, background, economic status, ability. It has nothing to do with it. They say it does, but it doesn't. They're constantly altering the test to allow for racial diversity. Racial diversity. In my nicotine-stained fingers, to quote one of my radio heroes. She'd like to see more parents involved. Obviously, we'd always want that. She wants to see that parents can opt their children out of the test program. And I don't see why they shouldn't be able to. Not every child is brought up the same. Not every child has the same abilities. Not every child is white, black, Hispanic, Oriental. You can't gear a test that's comprehensive enough, I guess that's the best way to put it, that's going to cover all of that. And when you talk about the so-called No Child Left Behind from George Bush, this is leaving children behind. And all these tests leave children behind. Because the teachers are running willy-nilly towards the goal of all of their students passing the test and not taking the time to pay attention to the individual needs of the students in their classes, the individuality of the students in their classes. I could tell you a story about our experience with that sort of thing, what I call boxing students, putting them in boxes, and if they don't fit in the box, then there must be something wrong. I could tell you a story, but I won't. It's about our personal life, and I know I'm baiting you, but I just don't want to go into that. But suffice it to say that my wife and I have had enough experience with a school to know that they're barking up the wrong tree. They're trying to produce a generic student. And because of these programs like Common Core, and the states and so forth, putting up standards, that if the school doesn't meet those standards, the school is in trouble. Well, they have no choice if they want to keep their jobs, if they want to keep their school viable. They have to follow these standards without regard to the needs of the students themselves. I remember a time when everybody knew who was getting A's and who wasn't. And yeah, there was a certain amount of social pressure involved in that. But that's human nature. You're not going to change it. No test is going to wash over that. Better term, whitewash that, make that go away. So I'm going to look more into Common Core, and I'm going to have some more material on that issue down the road.
It's not that easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves. When I think it could be...
Kermit the Frog with his bit of wisdom for the day. Of course, I'm going to talk about the environment. John down in Mansfield once again posting an important item about a West Virginia chemical spill that shut water off to 300,000 people in West Virginia. I don't know the name of the chemical. I have to look it up on the article here, and it's too long to pronounce. But the point of the matter is it makes the water smell like licorice. Okay? And they're not sure what the safe level is. And they're not sure if it's hurting anyone. But you can't take a chance. I agree. A chemical company had a leaking storage facility and allowed 300,000 people to lose their water. They can't bathe in it. They can't brush their teeth with it. They can't drink it. They can boil it. And, of course, there's not enough water in the stores to supply everyone. How much, the company is still determining how much crude MCHM had been released. The name of the company is Freedom Industries. Produces specialty chemicals for mining, steel, and cement industries. Of course, the liberals are going to jump right on that and say, oh my God, mining is horrible. It needs those chemicals. We have to stop mining. Okay, the country has the largest coal reserves in the world. But we have to stop mining. We have to put all those people out of work. No, what we have to do is we have to be more careful how we store this stuff. That's always been the case. And it'll always be the case. All right? I mean, we talk about fracking constantly, and that's a big thing with John, and I thoroughly agree with him. Fracking should not take place until it's thoroughly investigated and thoroughly determined that it can thoroughly be done safely, if it can be. And how are we going to, say, recycle the water that they use instead of putting it into large reservoirs and hoping that it doesn't get back into the environment? Why don't they figure out how to clean it up and reuse it so that they're not depleting the supply of fresh water in the United States, which, by the way, is diminishing constantly? 1 or 2 years of drought, and we could be in some serious trouble. It's already a well-known fact that many people in the West would like to get a hold of the water from the Great Lakes. Governor John Kasich, along with other governors on the Great Lakes, have successfully put a stop to that so far. But who knows how long that'll last. Moving right along.
They're coming to take me away, ha ha. They're coming to take me away, ho ho, hee hee ha, to the funny farm where life is beautiful all the time. And I'll be happy to see those nice young men in their clean white coats, and they're coming to take me away.
As promised, we've reached the point where we're at the heresdathing.com Institute for the Utterly Stupid. This week's inductee, Democratic Representative Barbara Lee, and 12 other House Democrats, issued a resolution stating that climate change can cause food and water shortages, which could lead impoverished women to turn to prostitution as a means of income. Okay. What won't they come up with next? I've said that before. I'm saying that a lot lately. Insecure women with limited socioeconomic resources may be vulnerable to situations such as sex work, transactional sex, early marriage, and I can't read this, that put them at risk for, let's see here, where are we? Put them at risk for HIV, STIs, unplanned pregnancy, and poor reproductive health. More broadly, the resolution says climate change will hurt marginalized women such as refugees, sexual minorities, adolescent girls, and women and girls with HIV. It also cites Hurricane Katrina as evidence of how climate change can affect women, noting that the storm displaced over 83% of low-income single mothers in the region. It's a resolution. They want the president to recognize the effects on women and use gender-specific frameworks in developing policies to address climate change, as if that's going to help anything. Okay? In the grand scheme of things, this resolution doesn't really accomplish anything or make much of a difference. However, it does epitomize the way that our culture uses climate change as an explanation for everything these days, while masking and therefore hindering the real problem. Yes, women who are living in poverty are more likely to resort to prostitution than those who are not. Yes, among other factors, natural events such as droughts, hurricanes, and famines do increase poverty. However, the resolution fails to recognize that the aforementioned natural events have been affecting poverty since the beginning of time, thereby drawing the non sequitur, connecting climate change directly with poverty. And that, in turn, let's go one step further, connecting climate change directly with the increase of prostitution? Question mark. Natural disasters are nothing new. They've been taking place for thousands of years and will in all likelihood continue to take place for thousands more. No kidding. Their degree and severity will continue to ebb and flow. This is not something we can control. Said that before. So instead of blaming the weather for increased prostitution and spending billions trying to prevent natural disasters from taking place, our government's time would be better used addressing the core issue, poverty, which can be addressed by encouraging job growth. Hello? Okay, give people something to make a living with, and they might just not be impoverished. That would be great. As promised, our weekly foray into the Constitution of the United States of America. We're on Article 1, Section 8, the powers of Congress. And we'll go over a brief part of it because, again, next week we hit on something that's really important here. To establish post offices and post roads. To promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive rights to their respective writings and discoveries. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. To define and punish piracies and felonies committed on the high seas and offenses against the law of nations. So basically they monitor us and see if we're following world laws, if you will, the fair laws of war, if there are such a thing, if there is such a thing. We'll get into a little bit more of this next week as time is running short, and we'll hit on to declare war. Okay, that's an issue that we can talk about for a little while, so we'll hit on that next week. Well, we're nearing the end of this edition of Here's the Thing. I hope it went smooth, because I really won't know until I watch it. DPR the man, that's who I am, and you can interact with me in the show by emailing us at hdt2010@roadrunner.com. You can check us out on YouTube and Google, Plus, where we're in full video, as I'm producing as we speak. And, of course, you can still go to the website and just listen to the show, which I will compile when I finish up here. Your feedback will be used for future material on this show, and I sincerely hope that you submit it. You can go to the Facebook page, heresdathing.com. If you go to Google and Plus and YouTube, use the search term Here's the Thing, or Here's the Thing, or Here's the Thing, or Here's the Thing. I'm trying to cover it all, just in case you don't hear me right. So, once again, please interact. Let us know how you think, and I'll let you know how you should. That's what it's all about. My, that was abrupt, wasn't it? That's my mistake for the day. Just to let you know, the show's live from Lorain, Ohio, WELB-DBJ Radio, and Estopiki Productions have proudly brought you this edition of Here's the Thing. Hitting the bar, hitting the bar. DPR the man, that's who I am. And in my own inimitable way, I will wish you a good day, a good week, a good life, and come back next week for next week's edition of Here's the Thing. You may even be a part of it.